So, a lot of countries have a lot of problems right now. But I think the biggest problem right now is the one thing nobody's talking about is the Catholic Church. I'll tell you why. I just had a conversation with my wife, right, about the Bible. And Catholics here in the Philippines don't know anything about the Bible. They don't know the origin. They don't know who wrote it. They don't understand. And they think it was just written by men, so it's okay not to listen, in some sense. Also, the Catholic Church's inability to teach the Bible, because one, they've rewritten it when they shouldn't have. Okay, and I'll explain the difference. There's no really a Sunday school for Catholic churches here. There's no Bible reading. They don't hand out Bible verses for everybody to learn, even though, like I said, they changed some verses, especially the Ten Commandments, which you don't do that. The Bible says you don't do that. That's one of the biggest Catholic church failures there is. Too busy listening to a Catholic priest in the old days when they should have been listening to Jesus. And the fundamental problem is what I've seen in the Philippines is when sin happens is people don't know how to act. They start acting by rappers' rule sets, right? So say some of the videos I've seen, like a woman's getting beat, murdered. Well, it's been going on for a while. All the neighbors heard it. Nobody's done anything, right? And there's other instances like trash, like when you have a trashy neighbor building up and stuff like that. That's the minor to some people, but it's not. Do you say something, especially when it starts going in your property and it starts affecting, you in some sense? And what happens in the Philippines is nobody says nothing. They just keep littering everything. Well, all the roads get clogged when it rains, and what happens is it floods. And the water cannot drain properly, so water comes in and it's ruined a lot of people's lives. So by not calling out the people that are littering, by not taking action, by the government not doing any action, what happens is they just come back to bite you in your butt. Because one, you didn't call out sin when you saw it, and two, you didn't stand up for God when He needed you. God made it very clear. You got to engage. People say, well, Jesus never sat with sinners, and that's not true. That's the first people He sat with, because that's the first people He needed to rescue. I think one of the disciples got mad at Him, the one with the hot-headed disciple, got mad at Him, Jesus, for sitting with the tax collectors one time. They weren't well liked at that time period because, He said, why are you sitting with them? And when Jesus did sit with them, He didn't say nothing. He let Him do all the talking until somebody asked Him a question. Then He preached to them. That's who Jesus was. He wasn't afraid to sit with sinners. You got to remember, Jesus was on the mountain being tempted by the devil, offering things that already belonged to Him. The stupidity of it all. He wasn't. He didn't fall for that temptation. So yeah, So what do you do as a human being? What do you do as a Christian? What do you do when you see stuff wrong? Do you let it go, or do you stand up for God? That's what it comes down to. That's a conversation I just had with my wife, right? So when you hear a neighbor being beat, and you hear fighting, and she's physically being assaulted, or maybe it's even him, what do? Nothing? Well, what happens is in the Philippines, a lot of times they just find a dead body, they go after the guy. But when you ask the neighbors, and the neighbors heard anything, nobody said nothing. And that's the wrong attitude to have. It's been wrong. But you can't change none of their minds. None of them listen. Even when you tell them it's wrong, even if you show them in the Bible it's wrong, they don't do nothing. But every Filipino, this is why it comes back to why I say the Catholic Church likes to go to Catholic Church on Christmas and New Year's and Easter, right? But they don't learn nothing. And the Catholic Church knows this. So the problem is, as a human being, is do you obey your neighbor's ideology when it comes to not saying nothing, not engaging, not doing the things you're supposed to do for God? Or do you obey God's words? Which one's more important? Who died on the cross for you? And keep in mind, John the Baptist got beheaded. He did what God wanted him to do. Understandable. Moses, he lost his temper. He broke his stick, so he wasn't allowed in the promised land. Right? Jesus died on the cross, did nothing wrong. Just the Jews were jealous of him. So yeah, you obeying God doesn't always mean that you're going to have a long, perfect life, but it does mean you're going to have a nice, righteous life. It does mean that when you do die from this world, God's going to keep you in His. That's what it all comes down to. Every day we're being tested as human beings. We have to break that. We got to break it, man. So like I said, I made it very, very clear. How do you want to live in life? When you see something wrong, when you see somebody being hurt, when you see, somebody just piling a bunch of garbage all the time and not living a clean life, when you see crime happening, when you see just sin, period, any level of sin, what are you going to do about it? Because if you don't do nothing about it, you can no longer call yourself a person of God. Just stop praying, because God's not going to hear you after that. Because when God needed you the most, when Jesus needed you the most, you turn his back on him, because you're more worried about what your neighbor thinks instead of what Jesus thinks about you. And there's only one person that can protect you. That's God. So it's up to you.